Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, Ray.
Well, hello, Tricia. Hi.
Good to see you today.
Good to see you too.
Today we have Raymond Paul Johnson. He is the author of Conspiracy Ignited. So I'm really excited to hear all about you and your book.
Well, I'm here to do that. Thank you for having me on your show, by the way.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm really ready to dig in. Where do you want to start? Would you like to start with the book or your story?
Well, we all have stories. I guess maybe the place to start is, why I'm writing a book at all. Maybe that's it. And we have to go back a bit to high school for that, because I had this history teacher. I still remember her name, Ms. Kratinoff. And you know how those teachers can make a big deal in your life. And she did. I had her for 2 years. And then I was a senior at the time, didn't have her class, but she knew I had been accepted at school, at college. And she asked where, and I said, New York University. And she says, oh, good. And what? And I said, engineering. And she looked at me and said, engineering? And I said, yeah, engineering, and I'm going to be a pilot. And she laughed. She laughed at me. And she says, Ray, a lawyer maybe, a writer maybe, but an engineer or a pilot? And that stuck with me. I didn't change what I was doing. I went on to NYU, got an engineering degree, and then became a pilot in the Air Force. And to make a long story short, eventually I went to law school, and really early on in my career, I got approached by a publisher, and the publisher wanted me to do a nonfiction book, a treatise. It's called Defective Product Evidence to Verdict. And it basically takes a new lawyer and tells them how to prosecute and litigate and try a case and do the appeals. It was a lot of work. It was nonfiction. I wasn't going to take it on myself, so I have a buddy named Mike Edson, who's another lawyer in Miami. And I said, Mike, you got to be my co-pilot on this because it has to be 850 pages. Wow. And I'm good maybe for 400. If you do 400, we can do this. And we did, and it worked out. And 30 years later, the darn thing is still for sale on Amazon, believe it or not. And I actually use chapters in my teaching at the University of Southern California, where I teach legal classes in trial law, aviation law, and aviation safety. So and I've always been a reader, like we all are, because you can't be a writer without being a reader, I believe. And I just gravitated towards thriller books, Lee Child, Jack Reacher, Michael Connelly. In fact, my dog is right next to me here, and his name is Bosch. So that's Michael Connelly's hero. So I knew I wanted to write a thriller, but I didn't know much else than that. So being kind of that I had some experience, I called my editor on the nonfiction book. And I said, need a little help here. And he told me the hard facts of life that I had no idea, that nonfiction people, editors, publishers, don't really hang with fiction publishers and editors. They don't know each other. They stay in their own network. Bottom line is, he couldn't help me. He said, but if you want to write another nonfiction book, I'm all ears. Let's go there. I said, no. This is going to be a thriller. I know it's going to be a legal thriller. So I was off on my own. I started writing while I was practicing law, which is a very difficult thing. And all I could do is come up with fragments. I mean, it just didn't come together for me. Along came COVID in 2020. And it's a long story, I'll make short. I happened to be in Cuba Cuba does a lot of trade with Red China. To make a long story short, I came back to California in January of 2020, and I got what they called very bad flu type A because they hadn't heard of COVID yet. But I was one of the first that had COVID because I caught it. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I came out of the COVID thing, and since no one knew what I had, it was in the hospital 3 times. And I said, well, if I'm going to write this thriller, it's going to be now, and I'm on my own. So what am I going to do? I said, I know. Whenever my back was to the wall, I always turned to education. So I said, so I looked up. I said, well, what do you do? Well, somebody said you can go get a master's of fine arts, and I said, no, I'm not going to do that. No, 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 no. And then I heard of a thing called Writers Digest University, WDU, and basically I started going to conventions, taking webinars. It was during COVID, so it was kind of easy. I also got involved with the International Thriller Writers Organization. They have great classes taught by knowledgeable people. And basically, I learned how to write that way. So now I figure I'm ready. I've got time on my hands. I downsized my practice. Today, I still practice law, but it's only as a teacher and as a consultant on certain cases around the country. But generally, I'm spending all my time writing. I had the background, and then I found out about this thing called query letter.
Yes.
Query letter. This thing called query letter. I couldn't believe it, to tell you the truth, but I know now this is what the publishing industry does. So I took more courses on how to do a query letter, and I threw a dozen of them out there. And there's 2 things that happen. One, you either get ghosted, or the other one is you get rejected. Well, the first dozen went out there, and I got ghosted totally. I never heard anything back. So I sent out a few more, and then one day, God, I got my first rejection, which was a feeling good. I know, I really felt good. at least somebody sent back a form letter. So I thought to myself, this isn't going to work. And I was taking those seminars, and a great writer, I think he's the master crime fiction writer alive today in America, is James Lee Burke. And James, he's out of Louisiana. And James Lee was on a seminar, and somebody said, well, were you ever rejected? And he said, yeah, the first time on my debut novel, over 300 times. And that rang a bell. I said, if James Lee Burke can get rejected 300 times, what can I do? I could probably thousands in a year I could get rejected. So one thing when you're a fighter pilot, you start to think about the quickest way to A to B. That's what I thought about. And I said, you know what? I'll just enter competitions. And if the book does well, then I have something to talk about in my query letter. And if it doesn't do well, I can go back to flying or law or something else. So I did. And there are only few that will take unpublished manuscripts and bounce them against published books. One of those was Maxi Book Award. And another one was Reader's Favorite. We'll do a review for you. Anyway, that worked out well. I got an all 5-star review, and I was in the top 5, a finalist in the Maxi Book Awards. So now I had something to put in my query letter. I did, and everything changed. I immediately got, 3 agents call me, and we talked, and soon thereafter a publisher. And it's just a totally different thing. Meanwhile, I really like this competition thing. So one of my favorite authors over the years was Clive Cussler. Clive Cussler writes the Dirk Pitt novels, so he did. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But his son, Dirk Cussler, is still doing it and runs a foundation in Clive's name called the Adventure Writers Conference competition. And it's international. and they will take unpublished manuscripts. So I threw mine in there, and I'm proud to say I ended up. It took a while, but because you go through different layers, but I was a top 10 in the top 10 selection. Yeah. So then the final story about that was there was one other Chanticleer International Book Awards, and I entered that, and I ended up getting first place in suspense thrillers. So it's called a Clue Award, and first place category winner. So now I'm finished with competitions. I'm working with a publisher. I have a wonderful editor who's the first real editor to look at the book, to tell you the truth. And she worked some magic with me, which was very nice. And I'm on the edge of my debut novel being published, which is June 25th.
Right. I was going to say it releases next week, right?
Next week, right. And kind of almost as thrilling, my publisher arranged for me to go to the American Library Association conference in San Diego. I had never even heard of it, but it turns out to be a pretty big deal. 25,000 attendees, and they all love books. So I get to be there, talk to people about the book, and sign books and things like that. So that's kind of a great way to kick it off.
Fun. Yeah, it was funny when you said I threw out a couple dozen query letters because my spreadsheet of query letters was like 300 plus queries.
Oh, I have a friend, and he's a published author now. He's on his third historical fiction book. He's out here in California, and I met him at a conference, and he showed me his writing room, his study. He had used one wall. He had 350 rejections up there before he got somebody to say yes to him. So, yeah, it's a struggle, but I guess there is a shortcut if you can just enter those competitions and win, because then I think the agents and the publishers know it's been vetted by an outsider. And so that's one recommendation I'd give to everybody. Worked out well for me. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Very cool.
Wow.
So jump into your book. Tell us about the characters, the setting, what we're going to experience.
Okay. The name of it is Conspiracy Ignited, and it's a legal thriller, but it's an action adventure thriller too. And the protagonist or the hero just happens to be a pilot lawyer, like somebody else we know. And by the way, I am a Hemingway believer. In other words, I use short paragraphs, short sentences, short chapters, short everything. Get right to the point.
Do you use semicolons though? Let me know if you use semicolons.
I use semicolons like an artist might use ultra orange in their paintings. I use them, but sparingly. Same thing with exclamation points. I had one friend do a beta read. Yeah, do a beta read on a book, and he goes, "You got a thriller here. Why don't you use exclamation points?" And I said, "Because if the writing is good, you don't need them."
No, you don't need exclamation points in there.
Those are all little things, right? We pick up. So, yeah. So anyway, it takes place in Southern California. Different scenes, mostly in LA. In fact, in the South Bay area of LA, which a lot of people don't know about. It's south of LAX, the airport, and it's wonderful. It's 3 beach cities. The Beach Boys came from here. So that's the setting. But the bad characters take the good guys to San Diego and to Santa Barbara also. The bad guys, I love writing villains. I just do. And the bad guys, as one reviewer, I just got in a few of these pre-release reviews. You know, this one is by an editor of a magazine called Forum, and Sharon Arkin is her name. And one thing she said in it was Johnson's bad guys are really, with italics, bad, and his good guys are really real. And that's where I was going. That's what I wanted. I wanted a book that was there was something missing from the genre. By the way, you look at Lincoln Lawyer by Michael Connelly. You look at some of the other lawyer protagonists, and they all tend to be criminal defense lawyers. Well, mine's not. Mine's a civil litigation trial lawyer, and that's a whole different world, which no one's, that to my knowledge, has written a full book about. And so that's what I wanted to bring to the reader, besides entertainment, which is number one. But the other thing is, a look-see and experience into what the heck a trial lawyer is and what he does and what he's up against, suing giant corporations in the name of just people, And so that's one thing that had to be, and the fact that she thought they were really real, since she herself is a trial lawyer, made me feel good. Made me feel good. Yeah. So the basically what happens is the bad guys have a society called the Raven Society, and the Raven Society is attempting to eventually control America, but they're going to start through the justice system. They're going to start not in the usual way that thrillers go. They either somebody's after the president or the Secretary of State in the executive branch, or they're after the legislator, the senator, or the congressman. These people are after judges. And again, something that's kind of missing in the genre is the importance of judges in the judiciary to American life. And that's what I explore in the book, through the bad guys, in the sense that they want to control the courts, and in that way, eventually control America.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's different. And of course, this poor lawyer protagonist that happens to also be a pilot, the book opens, he gets thrown into the LA harbor by a huge guy in a black wetsuit. He has no idea why. He almost dies. And he just takes it a day at a time. And these bad guys are coming after him because one of his cases is actually very related to what they're doing. I can't give away at all.
No, don't give away everything.
No. But one of his cases, and part of the mystery in which one of his cases is the one that got this Raven Society ready to kill him and his family and everybody else around him, his team, his legal team.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't read a lot in that genre. Back in the day, I read like Pelican Brief and The Firm and those John Grisham type ones, but I haven't read any recent ones. So.
Yeah, well, John Grisham is well known and does a great job, but his stories are different. Mine's more of the action adventure, although the one with Tom Cruise, can't remember it.
The Firm.
The Firm. Yeah. That one did have a lot of action adventure. Yeah. That was really good.
Running through the pyramid of Memphis, right?
Right. Watch Tom run.
Right.
Yeah. But so that's what the book's about. Of course, the fact that he can fly is his superpower. And he uses that because it's really just him, his wife, who is the kind of the computer expert for his law firm, his investigator, who's a very interesting guy. Everybody that's read the book loves the investigator. And a few people, he's got paralegals, lawyers on his team, but the whole operation is maybe 12 or 15 people against this worldwide alliance. Is pretty tough odds. I can't tell you if he wins or not. But.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to always be a happily ever after.
That's true. True.
And there are many, degrees of happy and good and great and blacks and right.
Yeah. Well, everybody, the pre-release reviewers that have read the book, they all like the ending. So there you go. They all.
That's good. Well, the ending is a pretty big part, right?
Seems to me. If you don't get some satisfaction at the end, then something's a little wrong. Although there have been some good books written that don't, but that's tough.
The ones you're just left to like make up your own ending.
Oh God, I hate those.
Yeah.
I watched the movie the other day, and that's what they did. It was an older movie, about 20 years old. I couldn't believe they didn't, the director didn't want to give an ending to it. It killed me. My wife just got up and left the room. But yeah, so it comes out. Um, I am into while I'm waiting for these competitions to come and to get something other than a rejection query response. I got good advice from Writers Digest University and from the International Thriller Writers Group to, look, while you're waiting, start writing, write that second one. And that was the greatest because it's been very busy the last 3 months for me. And just with my publisher and publicist trying to assist them in any way I could. And I have done no writing, which is killing me. but prior to that, I did get 50,000 words down towards my first draft. So right now I'm feeling real good about having that in the bank. And I'll pick up on it probably, sometime in August. I'll probably pick up on it because it's going to be kind of busy between now and then. But
Right.
yeah.
So are these going to be standalone books, or are they in a series, similar characters, or just similar genres?
It's no, Eric Ridge. That's the name of the lawyer pilot, and it's called an Eric Ridge thriller. So
Okay.
The second book is a follow-on, and I imagine the third one will be. And I don't know, I think, well, I was at a signing with Michael Conley once, and he said, when I started, I didn't think Harry Bosch would be in 30 or 40 books. So the answer is I don't know if it'll end at 3, but I know it'll be at least 2 because I've got that half written.
Right. Well, it's how many things can you put one person through, though?
Well, this guy is not the luckiest guy in the world. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point. Let's just say that, like, it's hard. It's hard to talk about the book without giving some away. But let's say there are remnants of the bad guys that maybe have some revenge in mind.
Oh, okay.
Let's
Got
leave it
it.
like that. Yeah, without going into detail. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, I'm equating that to, I write mostly fantasy, but it's sort of the same thing. Like you have a bad guy and a good guy, right? And in my series, I wrote one series and I couldn't let go of the characters. So then I wrote like, a related series, and the bad guy or the bad person kind of goes through the whole thread of both of the series. So I'm one to talk about not letting go of people.
It's tough.
Yeah, and putting your characters through a lot. So
yeah. What's the old adage? Kill your darlings. That's what they tell you to do. Kill your darlings. And they're right, but some you just you if you're going to kill them, you got to do it much later in life, I think.
well, but no pets. We're not going to harm any pets here.
No way. And I have a dog and cat that's based on dog and cat that we had. My wife and I have 5 cats and a dog right now, so we like animals. And I want to tell you, they say, try to be realistic. Well, it was easy with the protagonist because he's a lawyer pilot, and you can count on yourself kind of if you're a lawyer pilot to know how they think from a point of view. But not so much with the cat and the dog. I mean, you had to, I had to really get into the cat and the dog I had in mind. It's good. So they play a good big part too. It's a pivotal part. Let's use that word.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a little tidbit that we can look for in your book.
Yeah.
Is this written first person or third person?
Third person, close, very,
Close.
very
Okay.
as close as you can get. I
Right.
mean, it's basically, well, it's like we all should write, I guess, show, don't tell, that kind of thing. And
Right.
what I tried to do was show. I had 5. It is multiple point of view. I had 5 different points of view in the book, and 2 of them, of course, are the bad guy and the good guy. And then the good guy's sidekick, who's the investigator, was a third. And then there were a couple of surprise point of views after that.
Yeah, I only took like one legal course in school. I'm a science major, and it was logic, and it was making a logical argument or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by like just how illogical I thought before this class. So that is my one foray into a legal class.
Well, I'll tell you, if most lawyers will say this, especially trial lawyers, trial attorneys that go into trial situations, that one thing you learn is, and I try to explore this in the book, there's no black and there's no white. There's only gray in the legal world, and which some people might say is not good. I think it's very good, and I try to explore that in the adversarial system in the book, because in essence, everything is gray. There's two sides to every story.
Right. Interesting. Neat. I love that you have taken on, you've done a completely different take on how the bad guys are going to take over the world, because I don't think that I would have ever thought that way. So
right. But well, if you think about it, though, whether it's a judge in a criminal situation or in a civil situation, I mean, some civil situations have millions and millions and tens of millions and more at stake. Well, if you can make enough of those cases go your way, all of a sudden you're a very rich organization, aren't you? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. And then that's not even talking about the criminal side, because people will pay a lot to get out of criminal jams, So yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. And I was asked once, the Raven Society, again, is the name of the bad guys, could the Raven Society be real? And I think the answer is yes. I've never heard of one, but could they be real? Yeah. Because the judiciary is a third part of our system. The founding fathers, really, they're as strong as the executive or the legislative branches in their own way.
Right.
And if you can control them, you've got a heck of a control on the system.
Well, just like we see our Supreme Court justices being, bought.
Happening in the headlines. Yeah.
Being given gifts, I will say.
Well, I mean, a lot of the book is in the headlines, but believe me, the book was written 2 years ago. So that's just coincidence.
Okay, for your second book, do you already have a deal through your publisher for that, or will you have to requery or
no? Well, I don't have to requery because my agent.
Your agent, you have
very much wants to handle it. Yeah.
Okay.
My publisher and I have the first contract does not apply to the second book, but they have first right of refusal, which means they can refuse, but I can change the terms of contract. I'm a lawyer. I had to do something.
You know what you're doing. Fun. So when readers, this is my favorite question to ask, and sometimes it stumps people. When readers are reading your book, what do you want them to take away from it? What is maybe a theme or a feeling or an experience you want them to take away?
Well, I know there are three things that I hope. Okay. One is that first and foremost, that it's entertaining. I mean, that's why we write, I think, to entertain people and to take them out of their everyday life and put them into some other situation, whether it's fantasy or romance or thriller or whatever. So that's number one. I hope they walk away from it saying, well, a recent John Gilstrap is a thriller writer, New York Times best-selling thriller writer, and he reviewed the book, and at the end of his review, he said, "What a ride!" with an exclamation point.
Nice.
And that's perfect, though, because that's what I was trying to do, is to give people a ride. So there's entertainment. The other thing, though, is you hope to inspire a little bit, or maybe bring people to experiences that might change their outlook on life. And I do that to just by using a real trial lawyer in a real situation that comes up on bad times. And hopefully that might inspire people to follow the law or whatever, become lawyer or whatever. And then I guess my third one is to provoke thought. I mean, I like to finish a book and wish that there were more to the book. And then not only that, but say, well, and what about that? And what does that mean to me? And so I tried to provoke thought, and that's why I brought the judiciary into it, so that people could think more about judges. I mean, magistrates, not to get political on us here, but look at the border problem we have that everybody agrees we have. One of the reasons is we don't have enough immigration judges. I mean, had we put more immigration judges in place, a lot of this problem at the border wouldn't exist today. So, at least in my opinion. So, yeah, it's hopefully to provoke thought about the importance of the judiciary in America. Yeah.
Neat. Well, I'm excited to read it. Conspiracy Ignited comes out June 25th. Where can we find you and your book?
I had to write that down. Well, I mean, the book is on with all the usual suspects: Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Amazon, Apple, and on and on and on. You can find out more about the book through my website, because in taking those courses, they said, look, get yourself a good website. So I did. And a wonderful website designer. And I'm going to plug her because she's that great. Her name is Maddie James at Xuni.com, XUNI.com. She is fantastic, and her two sons work with her out of Colorado. Super. Anyway, her website that she made for me is RaymondPaulJohnson.com. That's my name.com. And I'm on Facebook as Raymond Paul Johnson, thriller writer. I'm on X as RP Johnson Books. I'm on Instagram as Raymond Paul Johnson, space author. And I'm on my favorite, which is LinkedIn, just as Raymond Paul Johnson. So
great.
Yeah. No TikTok. Sorry. Yes. I just, just couldn't get it. I tried.
That one's challenging. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you for being here. And I am very excited to read your book and see what comes next for you as well.
Well, again, thank you for having me on the show. If you have any questions, you can get me through any of those, or easiest is my website because it's got the email address on it. So.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Well, thanks again, Ray.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.